Okay, how do I delete this? Okay, got a virtual box VMware. What happened to this thing? Oh, it's still there. Okay. Okay, I'll do it later. I'm gonna program some Holy C because that's my that's what I'm supposed to do because God said so. Mm. But why is it so small? I can barely read anything. Bro, how do I make it? It's so. Okay, let's give it a read. Documentation. So compiler immediately creates, okay, variables, integer. How is it? Duplicate. Declaration of an initial assigned variable, 64-bit. That's why it's 64. That makes sense. And declaring a string, U8. Interesting expression. Assign, add, subtract, divide, multiply, shift left, bitwise. Okay. Similar to the 64. Okay. Arrays. Oh, interesting. One byte, typical size, character. Okay. 8-bit. Floating point. Let's see. Whoa, floating point, long double, so 16, extended precision. Okay, what is the point? It's bigger for some reason, even in Temple of Wells, I mean Holy See. Apple OS. Okay, everything is just crashing. It's fine though. Look at how many programs are being opened. They got like algorithms. What the heck? Unsigned 8-bit integer. Boolean. No, okay. Drive types, pointer stores, memory address, array, fixed size collection, function type, reference. Why doesn't user defined? Okay, C, union, float. So float is a 8-bit integer types. Okay, character, 1 bit. Why? Make it bigger, please. How floating point numbers are represented? What the fuck? I mean, it does have a floating point unassigned. So these are all of the types, and what are the syntax for them? It's like int, okay, 8-bit, int a I8. It'd be like a signed 8-bit integer. Cool. So what the fuck are these? C language. I'm looking at types. No. What is types? Okay, cool. Man, that's emotional. Fuck. Fucking hell. I like this clip too. This one is funny as hell. It's good to be kings. Man, he's in heaven. Hello. F7, God's word. The good thing about it is I can just exit it, come back, go back in. Inheritance, class inheritance. Hello.
They operate very differently. Today we're going under the hood to understand how these languages really work on a fundamental level. By exploring the key differences, we can appreciate the strength and the use cases of each. Hi everyone, I'm San, co-author of the best-selling System Design Interview books. Our goal is to make complex system design concepts easy to understand through clear animations and simple words. Let's get started. C++ is a compiled language. It begins its journey when the source code is sent to a compiler. The compiler meticulously analyzes the code and translates it into machine code, simple CPU instructions like add, move, and jump. The compiler outputs an executable file containing the machine code. This file is a standalone program that can be run on any compatible computer. This compiled nature makes C++ a great performer. It's often chosen for performance-sensitive tasks, such as gaming or system-level programming. Compiled languages like C++, Go, and Rust take longer to compile initially, but then run very fast if the CPU doesn't need to interpret or just-in-time compile the code. Now let's look at Python, an interpreted language. It takes a different approach. Instead of compiling, Python sends the source code straight to the interpreter. This reads and executes the code on the fly. This process makes Python exceptionally flexible and user-friendly. It is ideal for situations where rapid development and readability are important. With its interpreted nature, Python is a favorite among data scientists, educators, and web developers. It's great for scripting, data analysis, and web development. However, this also means it's generally slower than compiled languages, as each line must be interpreted every time it's executed. Other popular interpreted languages include JavaScript, Ruby, and Perl. Then there's Java. Java uses a unique hybrid approach. First, Java source code gets compiled into bytecode, which is then executed by the Java virtual machine. Here's the secret sauce. The JVM has a just-in-time compiler that dynamically converts performance-critical bytecode
Just in time.
into optimized native machine code. Right before execution. This means Java code runs significantly faster than purely interpreted languages. One advantage of Java is its portability. Since the JVM is available on nearly every operating system, Java code can run on any device without recompilation. Java is also designed to be memory safe and secure, with features like automatic memory management. This makes it well suited for large, complex enterprise applications.
Automatic memory management.
That demands stability, security, and scalability. Leading tech companies use Java to power critical systems. For example, Android apps are developed in Java, and Netflix uses the Java across its infrastructure. Other bytecode language examples are C# and Kotlin.
Fuck you. Okay. Fuck.
Do you want to make an engine? There are reasons to make an engine. There's 3 of them. The first one is you want to learn how to make an engine. Number 2 is your game has features that are not able to be made in any other engine in the market. And then number 3 is you have a big ego and you think that only real game developers make their own engines. This one is you're a big dumb shit.
என்னவா வராதீங்க
நான் படுக்க போறேன்.
சரி
உனக்கு அந்த இது கிளியர் ஆகலன்னா
ம் ம்
சொல்லு.
பாத்துக்கலாம் விடுங்க.
Firefox, very, very simple. Always protected. The best privacy, okay? We believe...
Do you want to make an engine? There are reasons to make an engine. There's 3 of them. The first one is you want to learn how to make an engine. Number two is your game has features that are not able to be made in any other engine in the market. And then number three is you have a big ego and you think that only real game developers make their own engines. This one is you're a big dumb shit. Don't do that. These two, totally valid. If you want to look at one that's about features, let's go look at Noita. Ta-da! Custom engine. It's called the Falling Everything engine. It was required to make this game because every single pixel in the entire game is a material. It's incredible. Fez. Another example is Fez is a platformer game. Custom engine. Why? Because of, well, this. It's a 2D platformer that takes place in a 3D world. That shit's insane. At the time, it was absolutely revolutionary. No one had ever seen anything like this. Now it's possible in Unity, as funny as that is, and many other games.
While that's installed, you basically basically other unknown.
Let's look at it. Drive boot off the drive. Drive bootloader is just go from drive C. Bootloader is just go from drive C. Bootloader is just go from drive C. I'm coming. Wow, it actually is a tour. This is a fully fledged 4S. Wow. Let's go. Come on, let's go do something. Oh, I'm just typing stuff. Okay. No, back. Is that Control C? Okay, I think I've messed something up. Let's go back to the menu. Find out how to do that. Exit. Alright, sorry, I'm just gonna reboot this. Alright, so we're back in. I would not like to take the tour. C/home. This is interesting. It uses drive letters, but it uses the such. It's like a combination of Windows and Linux. Clear. No, COS. Undefined identifier. Hell. Clear screen. Let's look at this menu. What is a God word? Let's have a look. Decide. Abide. Disapprove. Supreme. Let's look at this menu. What is a God word? Let's have a look. Decide. Abide. Disapprove. It's just printing out some random words. Wept, builder requires demand text condemning, pretty, blah, 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 blah. What is a God passage? Let's have a look. Whoops. The Holy Spirit can puppet you. Press. Okay then. Okay then, let's just have a look here. Press space repeatedly. Oh wow, why is it drawing all these lines? What's this thing doing? Did I start a game of some kind? Let's make... oh. Okay. They're certainly fun. And maybe if I have some more time, I can screw around some more with this operating system. So with that, thank you for watching this special edition of Installing OSs.
So, a while back I heard about this operating system called Temple OS. And it wasn't until recently that I decided to try it out for myself. If you don't already know, Temple OS is an operating system that was created by one man, Terry Davis. But don't let its simplistic looks fool you. Some of the functionality of this thing is actually mind-blowing. The entire thing is written in a language called Holy C, which is essentially Terry's version of C with a few C++ features mixed in. Features a bootloader, a multitasking kernel, compiler, text editor, graphics library, and a handful of games all in under 20 megabytes. After trying out some of the games in Temple OS, I thought it'd be fun to try to make my own. Here's how it went. Once I was done messing around with the games, it's time to get to work and figure out how to create new files. After doing a little research, I figured out how to open a text editor and write my first Hello World program in Holy C. After I had my first working program, the next step was to figure out how to create and display graphics. From what I could gather, all of the graphics in Temple OS games are drawn directly into Holy C files using a sprite editor inside Temple OS. This is obviously something way different than what you'd see in modern game development. Luckily, I found a video of Terry explaining how to do it. So for starters, I decided to just make a simple triangle. And once I was done, all I had to do was call the sprite function and pass it a pointer to the triangle. And we have our first graphics program. Next step was figuring out how to get the program to run with infinite loop, the input from the keyboard, and move the triangle around. What's really cool code for the game. A link to the GitHub repository will be in the description. Thanks for watching.
Let's do a C tutorial.
C, a statically typed procedural programming language famous for making the world go round. It's the language behind many tools we take for granted, like the Windows, Linux, and Mac operating system kernels, databases like MySQL, interpreters for languages like Python, tools like Vim and Git, and countless others. It was created in 1972 by Dennis Ritchie at Bell Labs, where it would be used to develop the Unix operating system. It would go on to become the mother of all languages, inspiring the syntax of C++, C#, Java, JavaScript, Perl, and PHP, just to name a few. It compiles directly to machine code and requires minimal runtime support, but is platform dependent, meaning the executable is designed to run on a specific operating system. It's a high-level language designed for humans, yet provides low-level control over memory and hardware. There's no garbage collector. Instead, your code needs to manage its own memory. When you create a variable, it's assigned an address in memory. You can store that address in another variable called a pointer. When the variable is no longer needed, you'll need to free it to avoid memory leaks. To get started, install a C compiler. A popular choice is the GNU C compiler or GCC. Create a file ending in .c.
you are interested, triple smash that like button, make sure to subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified.
Okay, I'm doing this. How big is this? Seventeen, 26, 34, 39, 43, 49, 46, no, 57, 66, no, 80, 94, 98, 102, 110, 134, 48, 48 in both of them, like 50 minutes. 48, 200 minutes. 200 minutes is what is 200 minutes? It's 3 hours. I think I can do it. Let's do a quick Bible read. Okay, let's do a quick Bible read. What is that story of bro, I'm so esoterically aligned, it's crazy. Leviticus. Now that the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him about the tremblance of meeting us, saying to the children of Israel, and said to them, when one of your bringings an offer to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of the livestock, of the herd, of the flock. If the offering is burnt sacrifice of the herd, let him offer a male without blemishes. He shall offer it of his own free will at the door and the tabernacle of the meeting before God. Then he shall put his hand on the head and of the burnt offering. It will be accepted on behalf. He will make an atonement for him. He shall kill the bull before the Lord, and the priest Aaron's sons shall bring the blood and sprinkle the blood all over the altar that is by the door of the tabernacle of the meeting. And he shall skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. The son of Aaron and the priest shall put fire on the altar, and lay wood on the fire. Then the priest Aaron's son shall lay on the pots the head and the fire upon the altar, but he shall wash it and rails and its legs with water, and the priest shall burn all on the altar as a burnt sacrifice, an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. Okay. If his offering of a flock of sheep or goats as burnt sacrifice, he shall bring a male. Okay. And if the bone of his offering of the bird, then he shall bring the offering of a turtle, doves, or young pigeons. The priest shall bring it to the altar, writing off its head and burning it off on the altar. Its blood shall be drained out of the side of the altar, and he shall remove the crop of its feather and cast it besides the altar on the east side into the place of ashes. Then he shall split it as its wings, but not divide it completely. And the priest shall burn it on the altar on the wood that is in the fire. It is burnt sacrifice, an offering made by the fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. Amen. What does it mean?
The Book of Leviticus, Chapter 1. The Burnt Offering. The Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting. He said, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when anyone among you brings an offering to the Lord, bring as your offering an animal from either the herd or the flock. If the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, you are to offer a male without defect. You must present it at the entrance to the tent of meeting, so that it will be acceptable to the Lord. You are to lay your hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted on your behalf to make atonement for you. You are to slaughter the young bull before the Lord, and then Aaron's sons, the priest, shall bring the blood and splash it against the sides of the altar at the entrance to the tent of meeting. You are to skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. The sons of Aaron the priest are to put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. Then Aaron's sons, the priest, shall arrange the pieces, including the head and the fat, on the wood that is burning on the altar. You are to wash the internal organs and the legs with water, and the priest is to burn all of it on the altar. It is a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. If the offering is a burnt offering from the flock, from either the sheep or the goats, you are to offer a male without defect. You are to slaughter it at the north side of the altar before the Lord, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall splash its blood against the sides of the altar. You are to cut it into pieces, and the priest shall arrange them, including the head and the fat, on the wood that is burning on the altar. You are to wash the internal organs and the legs with water, and the priest is to bring all of them and burn them on the altar. It is a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. If the offering to the Lord is a burnt offering of birds, you are to offer a dove or a young pigeon. The priest shall bring it to the altar, wring off the head, and burn it on the altar. Its blood shall be drained out on the side of the altar. He is to remove the crop and the feathers and throw them down east of the altar where the ashes are. He shall tear it open by the wings, not dividing it completely, and then the priest shall burn it on the wood that is burning on the altar. It is a burnt offering, a food offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord.
The book of Leviticus. It's the third book of the Bible, and it's set right after the exodus of the Israelites from their slavery, when God brought them to the foot of Mount Sinai and invited Israel into a covenant relationship. Now, they had quickly rebelled and broke that covenant, and God had wanted for his glorious presence to come and live right in the midst of Israel in the form of this tabernacle. But Israel's sin has damaged the relationship. So, at the end of the previous book, Exodus, Moses, as Israel's representative, could not even enter God's presence in the tent. The book of Leviticus opens by reminding us of this fundamental problem. It says, "The Lord called to Moses from the tent." So the question is, how can Israel, in their sin and selfishness, be reconciled to this holy God? That's what this book is all about. How God is graciously providing a way for sinful, corrupt people to live in his holy presence. Now, let's pause for a second and explore this really important idea that God is holy. It's fundamental to understanding this book. The word holy means simply to be set apart or unique. And in the Bible, God is set apart from all other things because of his unique role as the creator of all, as the author of life itself. And so if God is holy, then the space around God is also holy. It's full of his goodness and his life and purity and justice. So if Israel, who is unjust and sinful, wants to live in God's holy presence, they too need to become holy. Their sin has to be dealt with. Thus, the Leviticus. Now, the book has a really amazing symmetrical design. It explores the three main ways that God helps Israel to live in his presence. The outer sections are descriptions of the rituals Israel was to practice in God's holy presence. The next inner sections focus on the role of Israel's priests as mediators between God and Israel. And inside of that are two matching sections that focus on Israel's purity. And then right here at the center of the book, there's a key ritual, the Day of Atonement, that brings the whole book together. The book concludes with a short section where Moses calls on Israel to be faithful to this covenant. Let's dive into the book. The first section explores the 5 main types of ritual sacrifices that Israel was to perform. 2 of these were ways that an Israelite could say thank you to God by offering back to God these symbolic tokens of what God has first given them. 3 other sacrifices were different ways of saying sorry to God. So here an Israelite would offer up the lifeblood of an animal while confessing that their sin has created more evil and death in God's good world. But instead of destroying this person, God, of course, wants to forgive them. And so this animal symbolically dies in their place and atones, which means it covers for their sin. And so through these rituals, the Israelites were constantly being reminded of God's grace, but also of his justice and of the seriousness of their evil and its consequences. The second set of rituals lays out the 7 annual feasts of Israel. And each of these retold a different part of the story about how God redeemed them from slavery in Egypt and brought them through the wilderness on their way to the Promised Land. And by celebrating these feasts regularly, Israel would remember who they were and who God was to them. Now the sections about Israel's priests, you have Aaron and his sons first ordained to enter into God's presence on behalf of Israel. And then in this matching section, we find the qualifications for being a priest. The priests were called to the highest level of moral integrity and ritual holiness because they represented the people before God, but then also represented God to the people. Now, we find out why the priest's holiness matters so much back here in this first section. Right after the family of Aaron was ordained, 2 of his sons waltzed right into God's presence and flagrantly violated the rules. And so they are consumed by God's holiness on the spot. It's a haunting reminder of the paradox of living in God's holy presence. Because it's pure goodness, but it becomes dangerous to those who rebel and insult God's holiness. And so it's important that Israel's priests become holy, and also that all of the people of Israel become holy, which is what the next intersections are all about. Chapters 11 through 15 are about the ritual purity required of all the Israelites, and chapters 18 through 20 are about the moral purity of the people. Here's what's underneath all of this purity and impurity language. Because God is holy and he's set apart, the Israelites need to be in a state of holiness themselves when they enter into his presence. This was called being clean or pure. God's presence was off limits to anybody who was not in a holy state, and this was called being unclean or impure. Now, an Israelite could become impure in just a few ways: by contact with reproductive body fluids, by having a skin disease, by touching mold or fungus, or by touching a dead body. Now, for the Israelites, all of these were associated with mortality, with the loss of life, which gets us to the core symbol of all these ideas. You become impure when you're contaminated by touching death, so to speak. And death is the opposite of God's holiness, because God's essence is life. Now, this is really key. Simply being impure was not sinful or wrong. Touching these kinds of things was a normal part of everyday life. And impurity was a temporary state. It just lasted a week or 2, and then it's over. What was wrong or sinful was to waltz into God's presence carrying these symbols of death and impurity on my body. Don't do that. Now, the last way of becoming impure was by eating certain animals. And the kosher food laws are found right here in this section. Now, there have been lots of theories about why certain animals were considered impure and off limits. To promote hygiene or to avoid cultural taboos, the text just isn't explicit. But the basic point of all of these chapters is really clear. All together, these work as an elaborate set of cultural symbols that reminds Israel that God's holiness was to affect all areas of their lives. This corresponding section over here is about Israel's moral purity. The Israelites were called to live differently than Canaanites. They were to care for the poor instead of overlooking them. They were to have a high level of sexual integrity, and they were to promote justice throughout their entire life. Now here at the center of the book, we find a long description of one of Israel's annual feasts, the Day of Atonement. Odds are that not every Israelite's sin and rebellion would be covered through the individual sacrifices, and so once a year, the high priest would take 2 goats. One of these would become a purification offering and atone for the sins of the people, and the other was called the scapegoat. The priest would confess the sins of Israel and symbolically place them on this goat, and then it would be cast out into the wilderness. Again, this is a very powerful image of God's desire to remove sin and its consequences from his people, so that God can live with them in peace. The book concludes with Moses calling Israel to be faithful to all of the terms of the covenant, and he describes the blessings in abundance that will result if Israel obeys all these laws. He also warns them that if they're unfaithful and dishonor God's holiness, it will result in disaster and ultimately exile from the land promised to them. Now, if you want to see how Leviticus fits into the big storyline, it's helpful to look at the first sentence of the next book of the Bible, Numbers. It begins, "The Lord spoke to Moses in the tent." So we can see that Moses is now able to enter God's presence on behalf of Israel. The book of Leviticus, it worked. So despite Israel's failure, God has provided a way for their sin to be covered, so that God can live with sinful people in peace. And that's what the book of Leviticus is all about.
Okay.
On each new chapter is released, there is a certain amount of applied knowledge that I won't be covering in depth. Basic understanding of C and OpenGL are useful to fully understand this course. In this chapter, as is tradition, there is a certain amount of applied knowledge that I won't be covering in depth. Basic understanding of C and OpenGL are
I want to get the basics really, really fast. I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna basics. Let's just get it over. Please stop. No. Why does it look like that? It looks like the Play Store symbol. I mean, if you look at the Play Store symbol, right? I'm trying to look into the Play Store symbol. It really, something to do with Masonic imagery. Something to do with it. For sure. I need to get the basics really, really fast.
I'm gonna put the volume right.
C has the basic mechanism.
C language, invented by Dennis Ritchie at AT&T Bell Laboratories and also for developing games and applications. It is a structured programming language, meaning we can write our programs using a set of functions and modules. For object-oriented programming, we can use C++, the extension of the C language. To get started with C language, you need to have a compiler installed for C language. GCC and Clang are widely
Okay, fuck. It's just like lagging too much. I'm gonna eat and come back and stream.